Hi, welcome to today's webinar, Universal Truths, Jeopardizing Customer Service Experience. My name is Nick Sellers and I'm acting as MC today. We're going to give it a few more moments just for people that are joining, so if you bear with us, we are here, we are ready to go, but just a few more moments. Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning for some of you in the United States and further to the West. Today's webinar is about Universal Truths, Jeopardizing Customer Service Experience, and I'm going to take just a few seconds to introduce you to today's speakers. Bo Young is Sykes Director, Senior Director of Customer Analytics and leads the analytics and customer experience efforts at Sykes, focusing on creating an environment that constructs the optimal experience for each customer engagement. Boasts more than 20 years senior leadership experience in marketing, branding and market research, and leads a global team that performs customer experience studies at Sykes and Sykes clients. And speaking with Bo today is Kirsten Jepson, Senior Director of Market Strategy at Sykes. Kirsten leads the research, development and communication of Sykes' global product and service offerings in financial services, healthcare, retail and travel verticals. Kirsten has held senior product development, marketing and sales roles over the last 25 years and is deeply involved in communicating, evolving and refining programs to create a satisfying customer experience. Now, before I hand over to Bo and Kirsten, there will be a space for Q&A at the end of the session. If you have questions, please do ask them through the platform and we'll get to them when we get to that particular moment. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Kirsten and to Bo and ask them to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. So Bo, I hear and read so much about the use of analytics and how it's used to improve the customer service experience. Can you explain what analytics means at Sykes?
When I get to talk to clients all over the world, and whenever I do, I always try and set a kind of a baseline of what analytics means to Sykes. And the first thing I tell them is, if you Google the word analytics right now, you would get 660 million hits in 0.16 seconds. And then if you scroll down below the ads, the first 25 references to analytics all say something different. And so what I like to do is try and explain to our clients what analytics means to Sykes. So we focus on what I like to call human analytics, and it's all about using very smart people to listen to large sets of calls to do a few things. Number one, we want to provide some insights. Everything we do is based on the customer experience. Everything, and when you focus on the customer experience, you get an amazing amount of what I call unintended consequences, where when you listen to the customer and understand their experience, you also find opportunities to reduce handle time, to increase CSAT, increase NPS, things like that, and improve the overall process flow. So you're providing insights, you're finding opportunities for change. I like to think of what we do in some ways like an analytics change agent. We're trying to make sure the process and the flow of the call is optimal. And at the end of the day, I really want to make the customer's time on the phone more efficient, more effective, and create some standards that really create the best customer experience possible.
So with all of this activity and amongst all of this data and information, how did you and your team actually figure out where the universal truths really are in customer service?
That's an interesting question. You know, when you start looking at what we do, you know, there's kind of three components. First of all, I got a team of extremely smart people based all over the world. And then each account that we work with, they have a huge amount of data that they do their own account level analytics on. And then our clients do analytics on it as well, but that's, you know, statistical based, let's call it. And then what we do is we take a statistical sample of calls. Maybe we'll listen to 200 calls within a 30-day period, and that'll give us a nice statistical overview of what the entire sample looks like. So what we do is we have a proprietary scorecard where we listen to the calls and we capture about 100 pieces of information. There's agent attributes, there are customer attributes, there's some psychographic information. We don't really capture personal information about people. This is just more about how they're interacting with the agent and what their experience is. And so we do that on the call recordings. Oh, there's also a timer that's in the scorecard, and we time each process step, and then we can kind of trace back key agent attributes to process steps. We also try and look at some secondary sources of information. I want to look at emails if they're available. I want to look at chat sessions. I want to look at CSAT surveys. So we're listening to the call recordings from the customer's perspective, and then we use text analytics and human analytics to look at the different text exchanges as well, and we kind of tie all those things together. We're looking at all these different data points, and we'll call it the 3 C's. I got to capture it, I got to compare it, I got to collate it, and then I got to validate these findings. And we do that in a very statistical way, but it's at that point everything changes, and the statistics then turn into actionable items. And that was the long answer to your short question. That's where kind of the universal truths came from. We were doing projects all over the world, and certain things continued to pop up. There would be consistencies in customer service opportunities with our financial customers, with our telecommunications customers, with our technology customers. And so what we've done is just created these, what we call universal truths, and I kind of preach this sermon to clients all over the world and say, look, there's some opportunities here, and this is how we can help you. So that's where they came from.
I love that, but this is the moment that I've been waiting for, the big reveal. Please share with us the universal truths.
So I went and got 3 that I really think are truly universal and can be applied across all of our clients. So the first one, I'm going to make a very, silly basic statement that says agents make a difference. But I'm going to tell you why they make a difference. And what we've found is, I'll make a very simple statement again. It doesn't matter if the agent knows the answer, if the customer can't understand it. And so what we found is adaptability, which is a customer experience attribute that we measure. Adaptability is key here. And when I say adaptability, I mean I need to understand how much the caller understands about the problem. And then I need to give them an answer in a way that they can consume it effectively. And so you figure out how to do that from the moment the call starts. How well do they describe what's going on? How frustrated are they? What's their sense of urgency? And then I have to adapt the way that I solve their problem by a way that they, for lack of a better phrase, the way they want it solved. Mm-hmm. And so what this does is it improves the customer experience overall and increases the resolution rate. And so some symptoms of how this happens is, you look at call handling and you'll say, okay, did I start to solve a problem and then realize I had to backtrack and go solve a different problem because I didn't understand from the issue description what was going on? Okay, this is an interesting one too. There's a high perceived resolution rate. Let's say I'm hitting my resolution rate target, but at the same time I've got a ton of high repeat calls. That means I solved a problem, I didn't solve the problem. And so because of that, it's all, again, about understanding the customer's understanding of the problem itself. So when, like I said a second ago, you really need to get in and understand the customer's style of communication and their ability to explain their problem, and then troubleshoot, probe, personalize the conversation, do everything you can to make sure that you're adapting to the way they want to get this problem fixed.
Excellent. So that agent adaptability does make a huge difference.
Huge difference, and that is truly universal, as is the next one we can talk about here. So this is a topic that I bring up with our clients, where it creates a very interesting conversation, and the topic is, I'm measuring CSAT, I'm measuring customer satisfaction, and I do that through surveys, I do that through email surveys or phone-based IVR surveys, things like that. But I'm also measuring the quality of the call, and so I've got a quality measurement process. And what we found time and again is these things often work against each other instead of being complementary, because they should be complementary, because I want to know the customer satisfaction with my brand. I want to know their satisfaction with the agent. I want to know their satisfaction with the product. Did I solve your problem? Things like that. But on the quality side, and I know you're an expert, with banking and financial institutions, what we find is you'll see a quality form that focuses on, things you and I have talked about before, where you've got compliance-related things. Do I have to read a mini Miranda? Do I have to say things that are regulatory? And next thing you know, by the time you QA'd a call, you didn't really understand whether the customer had a good time.
That's true.
All you found out was that, yes, I'm not going to get sued because I said everything I was supposed to say. And so we see the same kinds of things in telecommunications and in our technology clients as well. So we laid this one out a little bit separate here. So the finding is quality forms are designed to check for compliance, but they're not aligned to understand if we're giving a really good customer experience. And the symptom here is QA forms don't really have the attributes that are important to drive CSAT oftentimes. Some clients are actually pretty good at this, and we go in and look, and they really have already aligned this. But a lot of clients, it's a separate department, for example. Maybe quality is measured by the customer service, but CSAT is owned by, say, a marketing company or a brand manager who's somebody who wants to know about their products. And so we talk about how do you get in there and align that. And then the other key point in there is CSAT fatal errors can be retrained. So sometimes we'll see a question that says, did you have a good experience, yes or no? And then for CSAT, they say no, okay, all right, I'm going to go ahead and figure out why, and I'm going to retrain that, as opposed to something in compliance. That's an auto fail because it's going to get us and our client in trouble. So we just want to be able to track both of these things, at the same time. And so sometimes what you'll see is a high quality score, but a low CSAT score. And what that's telling you is the agent is doing exactly what you're telling them to do, but maybe you're not telling them to do enough stuff. Or I may have a low quality score, but a high CSAT score, where the customer is happy, but I'm not tracking, the correct information, like from a compliance standpoint or something like that. So what we really try and do here, so a recent example would be a client who, and it was a financial client, who allowed us to get in and really try and align their CSAT and quality measurements. And what we did was we took the key CSAT elements that they wanted to measure, but if you think about it, they're trying to get as many CSAT surveys as possible. And there's a very finite number of quality surveys that you do. Let's just say they're doing 2 calls per week per agent. If you can take those 2 things and then collect similar data in each of the processes, your now data set is significantly huger and significantly more valuable for you to make improvements.
Interesting. It's almost like a qualitative, quantitative magic that has to
perfect way to
dovetail.
That's exactly what it is.
Really interesting. What's number 3?
Okay, this is my favorite one, and I will tell you that sometimes when I talk to clients about this, I'm a little embarrassed because the IVR just seems like a very basic thing, and it just functions on its own, and it is what it is. And the question we always ask our clients is, who owns the IVR, and why does that question matter to your customers? And so when you think about what an IVR is supposed to do, it's supposed to, in its most basic form, it's supposed to get you to the right place as soon as possible to solve your problem. So there are a lot of things that go on in an IVR. Sometimes there's some pre-verification. I ask you some personal information. Sometimes I'll ask you to talk about what you want to talk about. You know, do you want to make a payment? Do you want to make a change to your account? Do you want, what do you want to do? And so what we find is what happens in the IVR more often than not is it depends on who owns the IVR. So I'll give you a couple of examples of things like that. So we find some IVRs were set up, like say by a marketing person who, and the questions in an IVR are asked the way products are bought, not the way products are used. Or maybe it's set up the way products are used, but not the way problems come up with their use. And so what we try and work with our clients and say, look, you really need to, the flow of the call, and I go back to the whole process about how we collect information and how we kind of try and break down call flows. We want to give the agent the best opportunity to solve the problem quickly, and we want to give the agent the best opportunity to provide the best customer experience, which again, at the end of the day, is good for the brand and good for your CSAT and NPS and things like that. So what we do when we do an analytics study is we're trying to figure out a couple of things. You know, are they getting to the right place on time? And when they get there, do they have the right information available, you know, to make sure that the call goes as smoothly as possible? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. One is related to, I think I said this a second ago, but I was almost embarrassed to bring this up with our clients. So this is what happened. You can see that their original IVR listed, 4 things. So it was sales, customer service, product registration, and technical support. Very basic things that you would think would cover most, if not all, of the reasons that I'm trying to call you. After doing an analytics project, what we found was that we were asking customers, giving them options that were almost in the opposite order of the reasons they were calling us. And what I mean is 50% of the phone calls that came out of this IVR were about technical support. But we didn't ask them if they wanted technical support until the 4th option. And so at that point we realized there's a lot of money that can be saved here by just, and it sounds silly to say, reducing a call by 6 seconds saves a lot of money, but 6 seconds times millions of phone calls, all of a sudden now you start to think about there's some opportunity to save some money.
I can see clients taking out their calculators going, ooh.
That has happened many, many times. And so on this particular case, I'll give a second example here, but on this particular case, we asked them to do 2 things, which they did, which was, I'd like you to reorder your IVR based on just the call drivers, based on the types of calls that we receive. The second thing we asked them to do was, we realized that on technical support questions, only 40% of the time, people had all the information at hand they needed to start the support process. I'll invert that. 6 out of 10 phone calls, somebody had to say, excuse me, let me go get that.
Uh-oh.
And so now you're talking about 30, 45, 60 seconds up to a couple of minutes. And so what our client did was they actually did this for us. They reversed the order of the IVR, and then they put a short message in there saying that you were going to need your serial number, and there was another product, there's a technical product name on the back of an electronic device. And what that did was it reduced, after a 3-month period, it reduced handle time by 6%. And right there you can see the cost savings for the client. But the bigger thing that I was impressed with is their customer experience scores, their CSAT scores went up by 14%, which was huge because we had projected that they would go up between 8 and 10%, and we were really excited that this simple change, this really simple change, made a very big impact with this client. So the other example I was going to give is, and this happened very recently, we did a project for a consumer electronics company, and they sold a very high-end TV. It was $5,000-$6,000 smart TV. And you would think that if you're going to make that kind of investment, it's almost like a piece of art. And so you're hanging it on the wall. And when people called in, their serial number was about 1.5 inches away from a wall in a dark space that they couldn't reach. And so they were spending up to 5 minutes on the phone trying to get to the serial number. And it was a very simple fix. But we just asked them to put in the IVR, you're going to need your serial number. It is behind the TV. If it's a wall-mounted TV, well, please hang up, go get the information and call us back, and we can take care of your problem very quickly. Just a very simple thing. And we tried to turn a negative into a positive where somebody, instead of telling them what to do, we're just saying, hey, I know what's going to happen here. You're going to have to go behind the TV and get this, and it's going to be difficult. So why don't you go do that in let's just say it's implied in a stress-free environment. You're not having to race through it because you're on the phone. Then call me back and I'll take care of you.
So there are some ways to word that sort of thing too.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, I can envision that in a banking environment. Go get your card or account number before calling in.
Oh, that's a great example. With banks, for example, we've found that, they know you by your account number. Well, guess what? You don't know your account number.
Right.
So we find that, and that's happened with several of our banking customers as well, is we've got to help them with their IVR organization also.
Those are some really good examples. I can't think that those benchmarks don't appear again and again and become really important for our clients.
And again. It's funny because I get questioned, the question I get asked all the time is, when you say something's universal, that's a pretty bold statement.
It's pretty bold.
Because you're basically implying it happens everywhere. And I quit being surprised when these things kept popping up.
Really intriguing.
Okay, so Bo, before you talk about this slide here, there are 2 or 3 questions that have come in from the audience. So this would be a good time, I think, for me to ask them. The first one is this: what's had the biggest impact on improving our ability to perform analytics?
That's a great question because I go back to that whole what is analytics, and for the longest time analytics was just I'm going to go into a room and I'm going to crunch a bunch of numbers and I'm going to tell you what I see. And there's a statement that I always use when I talk to clients is that if I tell you what I see, I'm not helping you because I call it a so what. And in my personal opinion, too many times related to when you hear about analytics, you never get a so what. You just hear, okay, 4 out of 5 customers are in the top 2 boxes of customer satisfaction. So based on my analysis, you need to have shorter calls, and those shorter calls will make people happier. And then I sit there and wait for the so what, and I don't get it. So that's the change in analytics on our end, is how we get to the so what. So I can tell you that same thing, and now I can say, look, your longer calls are driving your CSAT down. The reason your calls are long are in the issue description phase. We're not adapting to the person's understanding of the problem. Therefore, when we get into probing, troubleshooting, all of those things tend to get longer. And so what I realized is our analytics told us I didn't need to reduce the long calls. I needed to reduce and refine a step that happened very early in the phone call in order to make the rest of the phone call go more smoothly. So I need to get a T-shirt or a bumper sticker with this made. We're about so what. I want to do the analytics, but then I want to tell you how to make it actionable and make it happen.
Thanks, Bob. The next question is this. Why do you think these are the top reasons where customer service experience consistently goes off track?
That's a great question, and I kind of laughed a little bit. And it goes back to a couple of times you heard me say, this is very simple. This sounds like it's basic, but it's not. You know, I was embarrassed to go talk to the client about their IVR ordering and things like that. A lot of these things are just taken for granted, the three things that we went over today. The IVR example is a good one. A lot of times, shame on us if we do it, and shame on another, contact center that does it. When somebody hands you their IVR, we shouldn't just take it at face value. We should go in and say, okay, let's make sure we're being a partner with you. And let's make sure, based on our understanding and our experience and all the analytics work that we've done and the customer experience work we've done, let's make sure this widget, this IVR you're handing us to use, is optimized to give the best customer experience.
If I can just add one thing that I've noticed about the work that you do, and that's that having worked with many banking clients makes a big difference in what you know about what banks in general do. So knowing what all of those banks do helps us contribute to any one partner that we have in ways that they otherwise wouldn't know, because they're one entity. Knowing what multiple entities does makes a big difference. And
that is a great point, and I will extend it even further than that. I have technology clients that want to know what banks are doing best practice-wise.
Good point.
And I want to, because the verification things that we talk about related to technology, like printers and PCs and gaming systems and things like that, is very transferable to gathering that same information in the IVR early in the call with a large bank customer.
That's funny that you should say that, because as consumers, we aren't just people who use a bank. We also use technology and mobile devices and make phone calls and all sorts of things. So that's very true.
And kind of to finish off the question, I got to the point where I'm not embarrassed anymore to bring up, we'll call it the low-hanging fruit. These things, they just pop up so many times that I kind of preface it by saying, I'm going to tell you something that you may or may not have addressed, but it's a problem, or it's an opportunity that we can work on together and partner with.
Thanks, Bob. There's just one last question I've got here from the audience. What are some of the reasons that these key findings that you've been through today, the ones that you've highlighted to us, are not acted on by companies?
Well, let's use the IVR one for example. I got a better one, Nick, a great example. So we just did a project for a smart technology product that you would use in your home. And they asked us to come in and analyze a set of calls, and we analyzed the set of calls, and we made some IVR recommendations, and we came to find out that we couldn't change the IVR because the IVR was, again, owned by a product marketing group within the company, And the product marketing group was using the IVR to collect data on customers. And I stepped back and I had a nice chat with the head of customer service, and I said, that's great, and if you want to collect data, that's great, but that's not what this is about. This is about solving somebody's problem, and you're creating, a very difficult, environment for them to solve their problem. When they don't understand what's actually going on, all they want you to do is fix their widget. And so you're talking to one group that has no control of something, and actually it got, what I just described to you, got escalated, and we were able to make those changes. And then the IVR became much more customer service, customer issue friendly, and the company determined some other ways that they could collect the same types of data, inside the call rather than in the IVR.
Cool. Thanks very much, Will. There are no more questions coming from the audience just now, so I want to thank Bo and Kirsten for what sounded like a very interactive session, which was good. I'd like to thank the audience for joining today, and if you would like to review the recording, it will be available on Bright Talk as soon as the processing has taken place. And with that, I would like to wish you all a good rest of day. Thank you very much.